The bronze star hit the pavement, rolled once, silence. Then a white cop kicked it and said, "Did you get this from Party City?" No warning, no reason, just a black man in a nice SUV, driving through a neighborhood that wasn't meant for him. But the man they laughed at was a lieutenant colonel in U.S. Army intelligence. He'd pulled soldiers from burning wrecks, briefed behind closed doors at the Pentagon, and the call he made from that jail cell, it triggered a top-secret surveillance protocol. Now tell me this. Where do you live? In your state? Does skin color still outrank the uniform? Because if you've never seen justice win by standing still, keep watching. The town of Clearfield, South Carolina, was quiet that night, just past 10:30. The magnolia trees rustled gently as a black GMC Yukon glided down Route 119, headlights slicing through the dark. Behind the wheel sat Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt, age 34, black, U.S. Army intelligence. His dress uniform was crisp, adorned with medals that told stories most folks would never hear. 3 deployments, a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, the kind of soldier you'd see in a Pentagon briefing photo, never on the evening news. But tonight, he wasn't in a war zone. He was 2 blocks from his mother's house. Ruth Merritt, retired high school math teacher, had made his favorite, baked catfish and collard greens. He'd promised to fix the loose porch light, stay 2 nights, then report to D.C. for his next assignment, a classified strategic post that required a top-secret clearance and a steel spine. Colby had planned everything by the book. His military-issued phone rested in the center console. His travel orders were tucked inside a folder on the passenger seat. The vehicle registration was current. His speed? Exactly 35 miles per hour in a 35 zone. He knew the rules, especially for a black man driving alone at night, even in a town that used to call his father Captain Merritt with pride, before they stopped saying his name altogether. He passed a church where his grandfather's funeral was held with full military honors. He passed a high school where he'd once outrun everybody on the track team, where the coach used to say, "You run like you've got somewhere to be, son." Now he did. But as he signaled left onto Woodvale Terrace, red and blue lights exploded in his rearview mirror. Colby exhaled. Not a sigh, more like a mental reset. He pulled over immediately, killed the engine, rolled down the window, placed both hands at 10 and 2. Protocol, precision, peace. The cruiser behind him sat idle for a full 30 seconds. Then the door opened. A white officer approached, right hand resting on his holstered weapon, flashlight in the left. He didn't greet. He didn't explain. License and registration. Colby kept his voice even. "Yes, sir. It's in the glove box. My ID is in my right pocket. I'm going to reach slowly, if that's all right." No response. Just a light in his eyes. Another squad car pulled up behind the first. Colby could feel it before he saw it. This wasn't a traffic stop. It was a judgment, one that had nothing to do with taillights or speed limits. He was no longer a decorated officer in uniform, just a black man in the dark. And even though his uniform said United States Army, tonight it might not matter at all. The first officer leaned closer to Colby's window, eyes scanning the interior like he'd already made up his mind. "Step out of the vehicle," he said flatly. Colby didn't move yet. "Sir, I'd still like to know why I was stopped." "You'll find out. Step out." The officer's name tag read Kershaw. Shane Kershaw, mid-40s, jaw tight, eyes hard. Colby knew that type. Not the kind who kept peace, just the kind who wore a badge. Colby nodded once. "Okay, I'm stepping out now." He moved slowly, deliberately, opened the door, stood tall under the cruiser's blinding spotlight. 6'2", full dress uniform, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and still he felt like prey on a hunt. The second cruiser's door opened. A younger white officer approached from the passenger side. Thinner, edgier. His name tag read Renshaw. Cole Renshaw, probably still in his 20s. His hand hovered near his holster like it was a reflex. Kershaw gave him a nod. "You good?" "Yeah," Renshaw muttered, not once looking Colby in the eye, just keeping the scene secure. A third cruiser pulled up. Seriously? Colby glanced back just in time to see Ava Pike step out. Shorter, stocky, face locked in scowl. She walked like she belonged to something tougher than this small-town street. Right behind her was Trent Halvorsen, lean and smug, spinning his keys like he had all night to make a problem out of nothing. For officers, one man, Colby stood still. "I've already presented my identification," he said evenly. "Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt, United States Army Intelligence. I'm returning home before reporting for duty in Washington." Halvorsen smirked. "Military, huh? What's with the sedan?" "It's a Yukon," Colby replied. "Government issued." "Yeah, but it doesn't match the vibe," Renshaw added, circling the vehicle. "This supposed to be your car?" Colby didn't answer. Didn't need to. Pike stepped in. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. You're not from around here, are you?" "I was born here," Colby replied. Kershaw narrowed his eyes. "Mind if we search your vehicle?" "I do," Colby said. "I've given you no reason, and I don't consent to a search without probable cause." The silence that followed was cold. Then Kershaw muttered, defensive for someone with nothing to hide. "Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle," Pike ordered, already stepping forward. "I haven't done anything wrong," Colby replied. "Calm, still, firm. I've complied. I've identified myself. You have no lawful reason to detain me." Halvorsen snapped. "You're starting to sound uncooperative." Then it happened, fast. Renshaw grabbed Colby's wrist from behind. Pike grabbed the other. Kershaw shoved him forward. His chest hit cold metal. A knee drove into his back. The metals on his uniform clinked against the car, then hit the pavement. "Whoa, look at this," Halvorsen chuckled, picking up the Bronze Star. "Nice prop. You get this from Party City." The others laughed. Colby didn't. Even as they wrenched his arms behind his back and cinched the cuffs, he said it again, steady as stone. "I am Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt, United States Army Intelligence. You are making a serious mistake." But none of them were listening, because to them, the only uniform that mattered was their own. The holding cell at Clearfield County Sheriff's Office was cold enough to numb fingertips. Colby sat on the metal bench, still in cuffs, back straight, eyes steady, across the hallway. He could hear them laughing. Kershaw, Renshaw, Pike, Halvorsen. Jokes flew like beer bottles on a Saturday night. Impersonating military? Encrypted devices? Sounds like spy stuff. Hope he enjoys county lockup. Judge Langston doesn't do early bonds for liars. Colby said nothing. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly and looked toward the security camera in the corner, blinking red, watching. But no help. He heard the clang of keys. The door creaked open. "You get one call," Kershaw said, tossing a cheap prepaid phone onto the bench like it was trash. "Make it count." Colby picked it up with cuffed hands, sat in silence for a beat. Then he dialed. The number wasn't to his mother. It wasn't to his lawyer. It was a number buried inside the memory of only a few officers in the U.S. military. Hashtag 378A. Omega string. 3 rings. A soft click. "Hi, Mom," Colby said calmly. "I ran into a little situation. I'm at the Clearfield County Sheriff's Office." A pause. "No, don't worry. I'm fine. It's probably just a mix-up. I'll be home soon." He smiled as if there was someone on the other end, then whispered, "Protocol Obsidian engaged. Merritt, clearance Sigma 1. He ended the call. Kershaw smirked through the bars. "Tell Mommy to bake a file into your cornbread?" Colby just set the phone down, right on the edge of the bench. The screen still faintly lit. What they didn't know was this. That mom call had just triggered a secure backdoor system, one Colby had personally helped design at the Pentagon. The phone's mic, now live. The location, transmitting. Every slur, every joke, every lie they told from this moment on, recorded, real time. In a quiet room of the Pentagon, red lights began blinking. Colonel Dana Whitmore walked briskly toward the Situation Hub. A junior analyst stood and saluted. "Ma'am." Silent protocol activated. Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt. Priority Alpha. She didn't blink. Pull audio. Get me a trace. I want names. I want files. Back in Clearfield, Officer Renshaw kicked his boots up on the desk. You believe that guy's a lieutenant colonel? He didn't even fight back. Pike scoffed. Probably watched too many war movies. Anyone can buy a uniform. Halvorsen walked by the holding cell, stopped, and sneered through the bars. Enjoy the long weekend, soldier boy. Colby looked up, face unreadable. Inside, he counted the seconds. Not for rescue. For evidence. Because if he knew anything after years in military intelligence, it was this. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. And thanks to single call, it was in a windowless room deep inside the Pentagon's Defense Intel Wing. The mood was colder than the steel-plated walls. Red lights pulsed across a row of monitors. FLUX Sentinel Drive was online. Location, Clearfield County Sheriff's Office. Subject, Merritt Colby. Rank, Lieutenant Colonel. Clearance, Sigma 1. Colonel Dana. Whitmore stood motionless at the head of the briefing table. She wasn't known for shouting, but everyone in the room knew when she was angry. And tonight, she was silent. Run me everything, she ordered, her voice sharp as wire. Start with the feed. An analyst tapped the keys. Audio came through instantly. You get this from Party City? Laughter. Shuffling. The sound of metal scraping pavement. A second voice, lower, mocking. Betty practiced that yes, sir line in the mirror. Dana didn't flinch. Enhance the waveform. Identify speakers. One by one, photos loaded on the central screen. Facial match. Officer Shane Kershaw. 8 years. 3 force complaints. 0 sustained. Deputy Cole Renshaw. 29. Rookie. Clean record until tonight. Officer Ava Pike. Former Army Logistics. Dishonorably discharged. Officer Trent Halvorsen. Son of Judge Everett Langston. Clearfield County Superior Court. Patterns. Dana asked. A woman with dark-rimmed glasses responded. We pulled traffic cam data from the surrounding blocks. Merritt followed all laws. No probable cause. They surrounded him within 60 seconds of the first unit arriving. Another tech cut in. We just got a ping from a third-party civilian network. A Ring doorbell cam 2 houses down. Motion triggered at 10:46 p.m. angle. Includes Merritt's vehicle and partial audio. Colonel Whitmore's eyebrow lifted. Get me that footage. The screen switched. It was grainy, but clear enough. Merritt's SUV parked curbside. A cluster of white uniforms. Raised voices. Then, a close-up moment. Halvorsen posing beside the patrol car with Colby in the back seat, throwing up 2 fingers like it was a trophy shot. God! Someone whispered in the room. Dana didn't respond. She just reached for her comm. Get me Agent Dorian Valance. Tell the FBI this just became a civil rights investigation. She turned to the room. Scrape local PD servers. Look for deleted comms. Messages. Transfer logs. And I want backup copies, off-network. A young analyst raised his hand. Colonel, we've located Colby's secure laptop in their evidence room. He had it locked in a military-grade case. They've opened it. Whitmore froze, then spoke low and even. They breached classified hardware. Yes, ma'am. Okay, she said, pulling her phone from her coat. Then it's no longer just excessive force. She dialed direct. General Mitchell, sir, we have an active breach of secure intel equipment in Clearfield County. Full protocol escalation recommended. Back on the screen, the Ring footage looped. Halvorsen again, smirking, leaning on the vehicle like a prop in a high school play. Dana narrowed her eyes. You wanted attention. Officer Halvorsen, she muttered. You're about to get a national press conference. And with that, the most powerful military intelligence machine in the country began to turn its gears, with Colby Merritt at the center. But what they didn't know yet was that a second device in the station had also gone hot. A redundant FLUX tracker hidden in Colby's encrypted laptop had begun broadcasting a digital failsafe beacon. In 26 minutes, military cyber forensics would take full control of Clearfield County's internal systems, and not a soul at the station had a clue. The system Colby built wasn't just listening now. It was watching. Chief Vernon Pike wasn't a man who rattled easy. At 61, the Marine still lived in him. You could see it in the way he laced his boots, the way he pressed his uniform, the way he stood when no one was looking. He had served in Beirut, lost 2 men in Fallujah, and outlived more battles than he could count. But nothing prepared him for the call that came in at 5:14 a.m. Colonel Dana Whitmore, the voice on the line, said clipped and precise, "Pentagon Intelligence Division, you have a man in your custody. Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt. I suggest you look into it." Immediately, the line went dead. Pike sat still for a long moment, then reached the thin folder that had just been dropped on his desk. The arrest log from the overnight shift. His brows drew together as he skimmed the charges. Resisting arrest, suspicious devices, possible impersonation of a military officer. Then he saw the booking photo. Dress blues, torn, bruised face, bronze star hanging sideways. His hands froze. He picked up the phone again, pulled the dash cam from Kershaw's unit. Now, 3 minutes later, he watched the video. Colby's SUV rolled through a stop sign at full stop. Speed? 35 and a 35. Signal? Clean. No erratic movement. No violation. No broken taillight. He called up the body cam logs. All four listed as offline. Technical failure. Bullsh * T. Pike muttered. He stood, his jaw tight, and buzzed the intercom. "Get Officers Kershaw, Renshaw, Halvorsen, and Pike, now." They filed into his office one by one. Renshaw looked like he'd barely slept. Halvorsen wore smug like a badge. Ava Pike avoided his eyes. Kershaw walked in first, of course. Always the alpha. Always the mouth. "Chief," he said, standing at ease. "If this is about last night, we got it handled." Pike gestured to the folder on the desk. "Tell me again why you pulled over a decorated Army intelligence officer 2 blocks from his mother's house." Kershaw straightened. Suspicious vehicle. Driver seemed evasive. Registration didn't match the vibe. He got combative. Pike raised an eyebrow. "The vibe?" Halvorsen chimed in. "We had reports of car thefts in the area. Protocol says check all unverified IDs. He gave you a military ID." "Could have been fake," Ava muttered. "People print those all the time." Pike tapped the monitor. The dash cam footage paused on Colby's calm face behind the wheel. "This guy? You think this guy printed fake credentials?" Silence. He leaned forward. His voice dropped low. "Let me tell you what you've done. You manhandled a lieutenant colonel. You cuffed a Bronze Star recipient. You trashed a secure laptop with encrypted federal data. And oh, every word you said, every slur, every laugh, every time you called him a faker, it was being broadcast live to the Pentagon." Kershaw's face went pale. Pike stood. His Marine voice came out now, gravel and thunder. "You didn't just screw up. You declared war on the wrong damn soldier." The room was dead silent. Then Pike said 4 words that made their stomachs drop. "They're sending the feds." And just like that, the boys with the badges realized they weren't the ones in charge anymore. At 7:42 a.m., the double glass doors of the Clearfield County Sheriff's Office swung open like a court-martial had arrived in person, because it had. Colonel Dana Whitmore stepped inside with boots that echoed down the hallway like a warning shot. Pressed Army dress blues. Silver eagle pins on both shoulders. Not a wrinkle out of place. Behind her were 2 military police officers in full uniform, and a man in a charcoal gray suit who held up a badge before he even spoke. Special Agent Dorian Valance, FBI. The deputy on duty blinked like he'd seen a ghost. "I want to speak with Chief Vernon Pike," Whitmore said flatly. "Now." Within minutes, the chief appeared, already buttoning his shirt, his face unreadable. They didn't speak in the lobby. They went straight into his office and shut the door. The rest of the station fell into a hush. Phones stopped ringing. Coffee cups froze midair. Even the HVAC seemed to hold its breath. 10 minutes later, the office door swung back open. "Bring me Officers Kershaw, Renshaw, Pike, and Halvorsen, Chief Pike ordered. Immediately, the four filed in. Kershaw tried to puff up. Renshaw looked like he was trying not to throw up. Halvorsen leaned against the wall like nothing mattered. Ava Pike crossed her arms, her jaw clenched. Colonel Whitmore didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You are all hereby placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a full federal investigation into misconduct, civil rights violations, and breach of national security protocol. Kershaw laughed nervously. Wait, this is a joke, right? You can't just walk in here. Agent Vellon stepped forward. Actually, we can. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and laid it flat on the table. Inside were printed stills from the Ring doorbell camera footage. A shot of Halvorsen smirking beside the patrol car. A blurry image of Renshaw high-fiving Kershaw. Then, audio transcriptions. Word for word. Slur for slur. Every bit of it, Vellon said. From the stop to the cuffs to the jokes afterward. You didn't just abuse your power, you broadcasted it. Pike cut in. You will surrender your badges, your firearms, and every department-issued device. Today, Halvorsen scoffed. You're taking his word over ours? Colonel Whitmore's eyes narrowed. No, we're taking your own words over yours. Just then, a voice called from the lobby. Chief, you need to see this. They turned the corner and froze. Outside on the street were two news vans, one local crew, and a tall camera guy already filming through the window. It had begun. The first leak came through social media. A still from a holding cell. Colby Merritt, hands cuffed, medals askew, sitting calmly in a torn uniform. Then the hashtag started. Hashtag Merritt deserves better. Hashtag silent no more. Hashtag you respected the wrong uniform. Inside the station, a wave of silence fell. Vellon looked around. You think this is just a news cycle? Gentlemen, we're writing case law today. And just like that, the small-town walls of Clearfield began to crack. Because somewhere between arrogance and neglect, they'd forgotten one simple truth. This country still salutes the uniform, even when the people wearing it don't. By 9:15 a.m., the sidewalk outside the Clearfield County Sheriff's Office looked like a protest line, and a film crew had collided. Local reporters barked into mics. Veterans held up flags. Teenagers with iPhones stood shoulder to shoulder with retired teachers. The hashtags lit up across every platform. Hashtag you respect the major. Hashtag justice for Colby. Hashtag born in the uniform. Within 2 hours, it was national news. Footage of Colby Merritt, battered but silent in his dress blues, played on every cable network. The Pentagon had confirmed his identity. The Bronze Star was real. The Purple Heart, earned in Kandahar. And then they found the story behind the man. A Sunday morning interview, recorded 5 years ago, surfaced on a veteran's podcast. In it, Colby spoke softly about his grandfather, a Vietnam vet who returned home to segregated hospitals and refused to let bitterness rot his dignity. About his father, who fought in Desert Storm and earned a Silver Star for dragging 2 wounded men out of a burning Humvee. And about how the uniform had become more than duty, it had become family. By noon, news outlets were replaying those clips on loop, framed by headlines that cut like razors. Decorated Army officer arrested in hometown while in uniform. 3 generations of service. 1 night of disrespect. But what no one saw coming was her. At exactly 12:47 p.m., a microphone was handed to an older black woman standing on the courthouse steps. She wore a gray cardigan, her natural silver hair pulled into a soft bun. Her voice didn't shake. Her name was Ruth Merritt. "Good afternoon," she said, looking squarely at the cameras. "My name is Ruth. I'm a mother, and my son is Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt." The crowd fell silent. "I've spent 66 years in this town. Taught math here for 34. Never missed a voting day. My father wore the uniform. My husband wore the uniform. And now my son wears it. But today, Clearfield showed it still can't see past skin to see the service." Her hands tightened around the paper in her hand. Colby's West Point acceptance letter, now yellowed with age. This letter was the proudest moment of my life. But today, that pride is shaken. Because my son wasn't arrested for a crime. He was arrested for his presence, for daring to exist in a neighborhood he grew up in. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I don't want revenge, she said. I want answers. And I want them before my grandson grows up and learns that in this country, even a uniform isn't armor if your skin is dark. The clip hit the internet like lightning through dry brush. Within 30 minutes, her speech had been viewed over 8 million times. Celebrities posted it with captions like, "Listen to this mother. This is America, 2025. Justice wears a cardigan." By sunset, Clearfield's town square was packed, shoulder to shoulder. Veterans arrived in uniform. Clergy from every faith showed up. A gospel choir from Charleston began singing the national anthem in full harmony, and no one told them to stop. It wasn't just about Colby anymore. It was about every soldier who came home and got questioned instead of welcomed. Every black family that had built this country only to be told, "Not here, not like that." And it all started with a mother who didn't raise her voice, but raised a son strong enough to stand still while the whole world caught fire around him. In the 3 days that followed, Colby Merritt said nothing. Not to the press, not to the cameras, not even to the Pentagon media team that gently suggested he release a statement. While the internet turned his bruised face into a symbol, Colby turned back to his desk, filed reports, read classified intel, briefed quietly with his unit. When his superiors offered time off, he declined. When they offered protection, he thanked them, then returned to work. He wasn't interested in going viral. He was interested in going forward. His silence confused some, infuriated others, inspired many. "He's not even fighting," one pundit complained, but they were wrong. Colby was fighting. He just wasn't doing it loud. He let others carry the signs. He let others chant in the streets. He knew the storm was bigger than him now, and storms, in time, always reveal where the foundation cracks. Then, on the 5th day, a simple email arrived in his inbox. Subject line, "Promotion Ceremony Update," from Office of the Secretary of Defense. Time, 8:47 a.m. The contents were short, direct, and unlike anything he expected. The following afternoon, Colby stood in a polished rotunda beneath the Pentagon's flag hall. The brass shined. The floors gleamed. The room was packed. 4-star generals, senior advisors, press limited but present. Behind them, just out of frame, stood Ruth Merritt in a navy dress and the same cardigan from her speech. He wasn't in handcuffs now. He was in full uniform, unblemished, pressed to perfection, the Bronze Star restored, the Purple Heart centered, and a new insignia on his shoulders, Lieutenant Colonel. The moment the promotion was read aloud, the room rose, but it wasn't applause that followed. It was stillness. Then the Secretary of Defense stepped forward. No script, no teleprompter. "Let me say this plainly," he began. "The military does not exist separate from our nation. It reflects it. And when one of our finest is detained, disrespected, and disbelieved in his own hometown, while in uniform, that is not just an insult to person. That is an insult to the values we fight for." He paused. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt did not scream. He did not resist. He did not demand vengeance. He activated a system designed for truth, and then he let it speak louder than anger ever could. Then the secretary stepped aside, and Colby, at last, took the mic. "I won't talk long," he began. "I'm a soldier, not a headline." There was a low, respectful chuckle from the crowd. "I didn't go through this to make anyone feel ashamed. But I also didn't come back just to pretend it didn't happen. This isn't about punishing for officers. It's about fixing a system that lets them exist unquestioned for years." He paused. "I don't wear this uniform so people will salute me. I wear it because I believe this country still has a potential to match its promises. And I'm not giving up on that. Not now. Not ever." He stepped back, and that somehow was louder than any protest. Because, in a moment when he could have scorched the earth, Colby Merritt planted a flag instead. Long after the flags had been folded and the Pentagon applause faded, a different kind of reckoning unfolded, quietly, bitterly, in Clearfield. The 4 officers once so smug, so sure of themselves, were now reduced to defense tables and courtroom whispers. Each faced federal civil rights charges, each with their own attorney, each alone. Officer Shane Kershaw, 40, the ringleader, never admitted fault. In interviews, he doubled down, claimed he was doing his job, that the woke mob came for him, and that Colby's uniform didn't prove anything. The jury didn't buy it. Neither did his wife, who left 3 days after his indictment, taking the kids and the dog. His house in Sycamore Crest now sat half-lit, with an American flag still fluttering out front, like it didn't realize who lived there. He drank more, talked to fewer people. Then one morning, a neighbor filmed him yelling at protesters on the sidewalk. The video went viral. Again, Deputy Cole Renshaw, 29, cracked first. He was the youngest, the quietest, and the most terrified. After 2 weeks of silence, he flipped, cut a deal with the feds in exchange for testimony against the others. In court, he read his statement with shaking hands. I didn't stop it. I didn't speak up. I followed orders when I knew they were wrong. I thought loyalty meant silence. I was wrong. The courtroom didn't applaud. But Colby, seated in uniform, gave him a small nod as Renshaw stepped down. It was the only acknowledgement Renshaw got. His former friends ghosted him. The union distanced itself. He moved to his sister's apartment in Greenville, where no one knew his name, and that, somehow, was worse than being hated. Officer Ava Pike, 36, wore defiance like armor until it cracked. She had always thought of herself as tough. Former Army. No nonsense. But the truth is, she had never unpacked what got her dishonorably discharged. When her own service record surfaced during trial, specifically her history of racially charged behavior while deployed, her defense collapsed. One reporter called it a betrayal of 2 uniforms. Pike avoided jail through a plea agreement, but was permanently barred from law enforcement. Her military benefits were stripped. She moved back in with her father, a man who once saluted her photo on the wall, but now couldn't look her in the eye. And then there was Trent Halvorson, the golden boy, the son of Judge Everett Langston, once considered untouchable, until texts emerged, screenshots between father and son, clearly showing they tried to manipulate the bond schedule and suppress internal complaints. The fallout was nuclear. The judge resigned in disgrace. The state launched a review of every case he'd touched in the last 12 years. As for Trent, he was remanded to federal custody without bail. The same cell block that used to take his calls now buzzed every time his name appeared on a docket. And the saddest part? He still didn't understand why he lost. He thought the badge made him bulletproof. He thought the last name bought immunity. He thought the system would cover him. It didn't, because in the end, the system didn't fail him. He was the system, and it finally came to collect. Clearfield, South Carolina, didn't change overnight, but it changed. 2 weeks after the verdicts, new policies were signed into law. Police cruisers now rolled out with mandatory dash cams, linked in real time to a civilian-controlled cloud system. Officers faced quarterly evaluations, including bias training led by independent firms. Hiring panels were reshaped to include pastors, teachers, and veterans. And for the first time in county history, a civilian oversight board held subpoena power over the department. At the center of it all, not a mayor, not a senator, but a soldier who never asked for the spotlight. Lieutenant Colonel Colby Merritt. He didn't attend ribbon cuttings. He didn't pose for headlines. But his fingerprints were on every reform. Instead of cashing in on book deals or talk show appearances, Colby used his own savings, plus an anonymous donor match, to start something bigger. The Merritt Foundation. Its mission was simple: fund scholarships for black students pursuing careers in public law, justice, or civil service. Provide grants to communities building independent oversight for police. Develop national training modules on de-escalation and racial bias, written not just by academics, but by veterans, activists, and former officers willing to tell the truth. The first scholarship recipient? A Clearfield High senior named Jeremiah Walton, whose older brother had been wrongfully arrested 2 years earlier. Colby handed him the award in a quiet ceremony. Just him, Jeremiah, and Ruth Merritt standing proud in the front row. No cameras, Colby insisted. But one local journalist captured the moment from a distance, a still image of Colby shaking Jeremiah's hand, the folded flag on Ruth's lap, and a caption that would be reposted thousands of times. Not power, purpose. Across the country, the image sparked something. Departments in Detroit, Baton Rouge, and Stockton reached out, asking for help replicating Clearfield's new model. Colby didn't respond with press kits. He sent people, advisors, volunteers, retired officers who believed reform didn't mean disrespect. He never talked about tearing the system down. He talked about building one worthy of respect. And one night, while sitting on the porch of the Merritt family home, Ruth turned to him and asked a question she hadn't dared voice since everything happened. "Do you regret staying quiet that night?" Colby leaned back, looked at the stars over Clearfield, and replied, "I regret that I had to." She nodded. Then he added, "But if I shouted, they would have heard my anger. Because I was silent, they heard the truth." That was the difference. Colby Merritt didn't seek revenge. He didn't need a badge to feel powerful. He didn't burn the system down to feel seen. He simply refused to disappear. And in doing so, he became something most men never get the chance to be, the quiet voice that changed everything. 1 year to the day. That's how long it took for Colby Merritt to return to Clearfield, South Carolina. Not in uniform, not under arrest, and not in silence. This time, he stood at the podium of the Clearfield Town Hall, facing a crowd that didn't flinch, didn't whisper, didn't look away. Some wore #YouRespectTheMajor shirts. Others held small American flags. But most just came with open eyes and open ears. Mayor Dana Whitmore introduced him, voice cracking slightly as she said, "Tonight, we welcome home not just a soldier, but a teacher." The room rose in applause before Colby even spoke. He waited. When the clapping faded, he stepped forward, rested both hands on the wooden lectern, and began. "I didn't come here tonight to reopen wounds," he said. "I came to show you the scar. You could have heard a pin drop." He talked about that night on Route 119, yes, but only briefly. He didn't dwell on the chokehold, the insults, the cuffs. That story had already circled the globe. What he talked about instead was what came after: the training reforms, the oversight boards, the youth scholarships, the uncomfortable conversations between neighbors who never used to speak. Justice, he said, isn't a lightning bolt. It's a decision, over and over, every single day. He didn't shout. He didn't demand. But he made people feel. And then he said something that would echo far beyond that brick wall room. "We didn't fix Clearfield by getting even. We fixed it by getting honest." A pause. Then, "We didn't change the badge. We changed who gets to wear it." The crowd stood again, this time not out of respect, but out of recognition. Because this wasn't the same town it was a year ago. The Clearfield Police Division had new leadership, new accountability tools. Recruits now spent more hours in ethics and racial bias training than they did on weapons handling. Former skeptics, like retired Chief Vernon Pike, sat in the crowd with folded arms, but nodded slowly as Colby spoke. Even Officer Cole Renshaw, now working community outreach in Charleston, sent a note that was read aloud. "Some people change the world with noise. You did it with silence. Thank you, sir." As the ceremony ended, children rushed up to shake Colby's hand. One asked for a photo. Another just said, "I want to be like you." He smiled but shook his head gently. "Be better than me," he said. Then Colby walked outside, down the same front steps where protesters once stood with signs. This time it was quiet. The warm breeze of a Clearfield spring night swept across the plaza. And for the first time in a long time, Colby Merritt felt home again. Colby Merritt never raised his voice. Not on Route 119. Not inside the precinct. Not even when the nation cried out on his behalf. And yet, he changed everything. In a world obsessed with noise, outrage, and viral anger, Colby did something almost no one expected. He trusted the system. Not the broken one that nearly crushed him, but the one he helped build. The one designed for accountability, transparency, and justice. The one hidden in encrypted layers, triggered with a soft voice to his mother through a silent protocol. He didn't demand a spotlight. He didn't call for heads to roll. He simply let the truth do its work. Because Colby knew something that most don't. If you yell, they hear your anger. But if you whisper the truth, they lean in. And they did. From Clearfield to Capitol Hill, his story was retold not as a tragedy, but as a blueprint. Law schools taught it. Military academies referenced it. Civil rights groups cited it as proof that intellect and integrity still held power in a noisy, divided country. What stood out wasn't how he exposed corruption. It was how he did it. With discipline, with clarity, with that relentless calm only a soldier and a son could carry. He didn't win by being louder. He won by being smarter, strategic, deliberate, timed. And in doing so, Colby Merritt reminded America of something it had nearly forgotten, that the most powerful kind of justice doesn't come from rage. It comes from resolve. It doesn't shout. It endures. It waits for the moment when silence becomes undeniable truth. Years from now, people may forget the names of the officers. They may forget the hashtags, even the town. But they'll remember one man, not because he fought, but because he stood still and didn't flinch. That's the kind of justice Colby Merritt gave us. And in that quiet, the system finally listened. The country finally saw. And the future finally shifted, not with a bang, but with a whisper.